Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Dorothy, and in today's video we'll be drafting and sewing this beautiful bustier wrapper dress or gown you are seeing on me right now. If this is something you are interested in, please stay back while we get right into the video shortly. If you are new here or you are just coming across this channel for the first time, you are welcome. On this channel, I post pattern drafting and sewing tutorials. It's all about dressmaking, and if this is something you are interested in, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned to when I upload new video every week. To my returning subscriber and also my existing subscribers, thank you so much for your love and support. Now let's get right into the video. I will be using this Ankara print for this tutorial, and I will use 2 yards of it. Also, I'll be using this net for the yoke and this organza for the pleat on the wrapper part of the dress. On my pattern paper, on this upper part, I will rule a line of about ½ an inch. This line will serve as the shoulder line or starting line. This part of the pattern paper will be the center front, okay? So on the starting line, I divided my shoulder measurement by 2 and marked it. My shoulder measurement is 16, divided by 2 is 8. And then I marked the neck width. The neck width I am working with is 3 inches, which is the standard neck measurement. You can use 4 inches depending on how wide you want your neckline. For the neck depth, I will mark that later. On the point I mark my shoulder, I will go down by 1 inch and I will use my ruler to connect that point to the neck width, and that will be the shoulder slope. Starting from the shoulder line, using my measuring tape, I will go ahead and mark my bust point on the bust and waistline measurements. So from my shoulder to bust point is 10 inches, and to my underbust is 13.5 inches. To the waistline is 17 inches. I marked all the points. Then I will use my ruler to connect the line horizontally. To create the armhole line, I place the measuring tape from the shoulder slope and mark the armhole line, which is 8 inches for me, and I rule the line like so. To know your armhole line, you divide your bust circumference by 6 plus 1.5. Mine is 36 divided by 6 plus 1.5. I had 8 inches. That is how I got the armhole line. I will name this line my chest line and this line my armhole line. To create the armhole depth, I divided the armhole line and marked the midpoint. From the midpoint, I went in by ½ an inch. Then on my chest line, I divided my bust measurement, that is my bust circumference, by 4, which is 36 divided by 4 is 9. I marked that on my chest line. I will use my curve ruler to connect the 3 points, and that will be my armhole depth. To create the dart, I divided my nipple to nipple measurement by 2. My nipple to nipple measurement is 8 inches, divided by 2 is 4. Then I mark that on my bust point, on the bust, and on my waistline. Then I will use my ruler to connect a straight line from my bust point to my waistline. On the underbust line, I mark 1 inch on the part of the center front, just as you can see me doing. Then on the part of the side front, I mark 1.5 inches. This measurement is not constant. You can use 2 inches or 2.5 inches depending on how busty you are. I will then use my ruler to connect a straight line from my underbust down to the waistline, just as you can see me doing. On the bust point, I will go down by 1 inch. This is just to eliminate any sharp edge on the bust point after sewing. I will use my curve ruler to connect a curved line from the point I came down by 1 inch on my bust point to the underbust. I will just use my marker to trace out this line so that the line can become more visible. To create the yoke, on the chest line I went up by 1 inch. This depends on what you want. You can maintain the chest line or go below the chest line or above the chest line, just as I am doing, depending on how much cleavage you want to reveal, okay? So I wrote that line out horizontally like this. To tighten the bustier, I will measure the shoulder slope and mark the midpoint. Then I will use the ruler to connect the point down to the bust point. On this line you see me touching, I will take my dart on that line. I mark half an inch on both sides of that line. Then I will use my curve ruler to connect the point down to the bust point. For the bustier neckline, I want the neckline to be a sweetheart neckline. So on my chest line, I will go down on my chest line by 0.5 inch. Then I will connect the point to the bustier dart using my curve ruler just like this. Then on the second dart, I will connect that to the armhole line. Then I will blend the midline. That's all for the bustier dart. So now let's take the remaining body measurements. On my chest line, I divided my bust circumference by 4 and marked it on my chest line. My bust circumference divided by 4 is 9 inches. For the dart I took, I measured the dart, which is 1 inch, and I replaced it. Okay, then I added 2 inches sewing allowance. On the bust point, I just marked what I marked on my chest line. Then on my waistline, I divided my waist circumference by 4 and marked it on my waistline. My waist circumference divided by 4 is 7.5, and I also measured the dart I took on my waistline and I replaced it. Then I added 2 inches sewing allowance. Then I will use my ruler to connect the points from my chest line down to my waistline. Before I cut out, let's go ahead and measure the neck depth. The neck depth that I am working with is 4 inches. So on my starting line, I went ahead to measure 4 inches downward. Then I will use my curve ruler to curve out my neckline. Then I will go ahead and cut. So this part that I am labeling is my yoke. And this is my center front, and also this is my side front. For my back piece, I'll be drafting my back pieces directly on the fabric. So already I have folded my fabric into 2, as you can see. From the center back, I went on to measure the 2 inches zipper allowance from top to bottom. Then I roll out a straight line indicating where the zipper line stops. Now all the measurements will be taken from the zipper line. From the zipper line, I measured 3 inches for the neck width and 1 inch for the neck depth. Then I will curve out a nice round neckline. On my shoulder line, I will divide the shoulder measurement by 2 and mark it. Then from the shoulder line, I will come down and mark 1 inch. Then connect the 1 inch to the neckline, and that will be the shoulder slope. From the shoulder line, I went on to mark all my vertical measurement, that is my bust point and my waistline. Then I will use my ruler to connect the line horizontally like this. On my shoulder slope, I measured the armhole line, which is 8 inches. I already told you how to get the armhole line. I will use my ruler to connect the point together and also extend the line horizontally. I am just repeating what I did for my front page, just that the back page does not have a yoke. Okay, next I will measure the armhole line and mark the midpoint. On the midpoint, I will go in by 0.5 inch. Then on my chest line, I divide my bust circumference by 4 and mark it on my chest line. Then I will use my curve ruler and draw my armhole depth. For the dart, I divided my nipple to nipple measurement by 2 and marked that on my waistline and on my bust point. Then I will go ahead and connect the line straight up to my chest line because I want the dart to stop directly on my chest line. For the dart leg, I measured and marked 0.5 inches on both sides of the dart like so. Then I will use my ruler to connect the line up to the chest line where my dart stopped. Let me just roll the line fully to indicate where the dart will stop. So I just extended that line to my chest line, then I'll go ahead and connect the dart leg like so. Now let's take our remaining body measurements. On my chest line, I divided my bust circumference by 4 and marked it on my chest line. Then I added 2 inches sewing allowance. Whatever I mark on my chest line, I will repeat the same thing on my bust point as well. That is, I divided my bust circumference by 4, then added 2 inches allowance. Then on my waistline, I divided my waist circumference by 4 and marked that. For the dart, I measured the dart I took on the waistline and I replaced it. And then I added 2 inches sewing allowance. Now let's go ahead to connect the lines like this. On the zipper allowance, I went on to remove 1 inches from it. This is to avoid zip bulge at the back. So I will connect the point up to my zipper allowance. Then I will go ahead and cut it out. Then I will notch the dart and that will be all for the drafting of my front piece and my back piece. For the skirt part, I folded my fabric into 2. To know how much fabric you will need for this, you will divide the biggest body measurement by 4, which is the hip plus your desired sewing allowance. Placing my tape roll on the waistline, I'll go ahead and measure 9 inches for the hip line, and I will also measure 19 inches for my knee line, and I will measure 29 inches for the length of the skirt I am working with. Then I added 2 inches extra allowance for folding. The total length of the skirt that I am working with is 29 inches. Then I will use my ruler to connect the line horizontally. On my waistline, I divided my nipple to nipple measurement by 2. What I got was 4 inches. That is 8 divided by 2 is 4. I marked that on my waistline. Then the length of the dart will stop at 4.5 inches. So I marked 4.5 inches as the length. Then I'll use my ruler to connect the line straight. For the dart leg, I marked 0.5 inches on both sides of the dart line. Then I will use my ruler to connect that line up to the 4.5 inches that I marked for the length of the dart. So on my waistline, I divided my waist circumference by 4, which is 7.5. After dividing it, then I marked that on my waistline. Then for the dart I took, I measured it and I replaced it on my waistline. As I can see, then I'll add 2 inches sewing allowance. Then on my hip line, I divided my hip circumference by 4. My hip measurement is 40 divided by 4 is 10. I measured that, then I added 2 inches sewing allowance. On my knee line, it is what I mark on my waistline that I will mark on my knee line. Okay, so I'll just use my ruler and connect a straight line down to the length of the skirt. Then I'll go ahead and shape in my skirt like so. After cutting out my skirt, I'll just go ahead and notch my dart area. For the back piece, I will fold my fabric into two, then I'll carry my front piece and place it on my back piece like this, leaving about 2 inches allowance for my zipper. After I make sure that I arranged everything properly, then I'll go ahead and cut that out. It is as simple as that. Then I'll go ahead and remove 1 inch from the zipper allowance. This is to avoid zip purge, just like I did for the back piece of my half cut. Then I will cut that out and I will also notch that area. For the wrapper part, I have the single fabric. It is not unfold, so I will spread the fabric like this. Then I will place my front piece of my skirt on it like this. I am just tracing the midpoint of my skirt front piece on the single fabric. After laying my front piece properly, I will go ahead and cut, and that's all for the wrapper. I want to give the front part a shape kind of, so from the length of the wrapper I went on and mark 1 inch. Then I will use my ruler to connect the line up to the upper part of this wrapper. Then I'll go ahead and cut that out. This will give this wrapper some nice shape. And that is all for the drafting of my skirt pieces. So next on, I'll go ahead and cut lining for it. These are my pieces. I have cut lining for each of the piece. I have iron gun stay on each of the piece, including the lining. On this front piece, I have iron wording on the bust area. So now let's go ahead and sew. I will place the center front and the side front like this. Then I will pick each of the sides and place them together, right side facing each other. I will take note of the notched area on the bust point and on the bust. Then I will arrange them properly on each other. Then I will use my office pin to pin them all the way around. And when I am done from this side, I will do the same thing for the other side front. Then I will take it to the sewing machine and sew. This is how the bustier will look like when I am done sewing it. You can see how beautiful it's already looking. So I will do the same thing for the lining piece. For the back piece, I have iron stay to it already, both on the fabric and on the lining. So I'll place my lining on my fabric like this, right side facing each other. Then I'll go ahead and sew the neckline, the side lines. And I'll also do the same thing for the second piece. For the skirt pieces, what I did when cutting the lining was that I reduced the lining by 2 inches. That is, the lining is not equal with the fabric, and I do that for the both front and back lining. So this 2 inches allowance on the fabric you are seeing will complete the 2 inches I removed from the lining. I hope this is clear. I think when I am done sewing, you will understand better. So I will just adjust it to the length of the skirt, then I'll go ahead and sew it. I will do the same thing for the back piece and also do the same thing for the wrapper of the skirt. I am done sewing the bustier, as you can see. So what I will do next is I'll just go and notch this bustier area that I sew. Then when I am done notching it out, I'll use my pressing ironer and iron the side flat. And I'll also do the same thing for the lining piece. For the back piece, I have also sewn it and I am going to notch the neck area. When I am done notching the neck area, I'll turn it inside out to the right face. Then I'll also go and give it a very good press. I'll do the same thing for the second piece as well. I am done sewing the lining to the fabric as well, and as you can see I use the fabric to start the lining, so I will turn it to the right face and I will use my scissors to push out the pointed edges. And this is how it's looking after turning it. So right now I'll go ahead and iron it, and I'll do the same thing for the back pieces as well. For the yoke part, I cut 2 pieces of this. That is, one will serve as the lining, so I place them right side facing each other. Then I'll take it to my sewing machine and sew the neckline. So guys, I am done sewing the neckline, so I'll just go ahead and trim the excess edges. Then I'll turn it to the right face and give it a very good ironing so that the neckline will relax very well. Okay guys, I am done ironing the neckline of my yoke. You can see how beautiful and how neat it is. Now let's attach the yoke to the bustier. I placed my yoke on the bustier like this. I made sure I arranged everything properly. To get this right, you should just start from the midpoint. That is the midpoint of your bustier and the midpoint of your yoke. You place them together, then you use your pin to hold them together, then you go and run a stitch. Or you can as well just join your lining, attach a lining to it, then you arrange it properly and go and run a stitch. Whichever way, it is still okay. But for me, I first of all placed my yoke on my bustier, then I went ahead to run a stitch, and when I was done running a stitch on them, I will then place my lining on the pieces, then I arranged them properly, then I went on to run a stitch. Okay, this is it after sewing it. So right now I'll go and notch all the neck area like so, then I'll turn it inside out. This is how the bustier should be looking after joining the yoke and the lining together. You can see how beautiful it's coming out. So I'll just turn it to the wrong face again and go and sew the 2 sides. Okay guys, this is it. I am done sewing the 2 sides and I've ironed it as well. You can see how my bustier and the yoke is sitting pretty. So right now I'll just go ahead and trim off the rough edges. These are my back pieces. I have ironed them, and you see this fold is my dart area. I have ironed it as well. So right now let's place our dart and sew. So I measured from my shoulder down to 8 inches. That is where my dart will stop. So I'll make a mark, then I'll do the same thing for the second piece, then I'll go ahead and sew. For the front skirt piece, I will also place my dart. You know the front skirts usually have 2 darts, and I already marked the dart area. That is, I notched a dart area, so I'll just trace the 2 darts, then I'll go ahead and stitch it. And I will also do the same thing for the 2 back piece of my skirt. I'm done sewing the dart area of my back piece. Then I did the same thing for the other side, and I also did the same thing for the skirt part. So right now let's go and join the 2 bodies together. So I placed the back piece and place it on my skirt part, right side facing each other. Note that these are the back, so I'll go ahead and sew. Then for the front piece, I also did the same thing as well. I joined the front and the back piece together, right side facing each other, making sure that all the that area are lined and the points are together. Then I'll go ahead and pin them down, then I'll take it to the sewing machine and sew. For the wrapper part, I already attached my lining to it, and it's just the same way I attached lining to the skirt. I was so tired that I forgot to film that part, but it's nothing much, but the same process that I used in attaching lining to skirt. And again, from the waistline, I reduced it by 2 inches because I'll be attaching this band, and this band is about 3 inches wide and the length is about 25, just enough for me to tie around my waist. And also for the organza that I will be using to pleat at the front of the skirt, I have cut it out as well, and it's about 3 inches wide and about 35 inches long. So I'll just go ahead and fold the organza, then I'll go ahead and pleat it. This is the organza when I am done pleating it. So right now I'll place it on the wrapper like so, then I will use my office pin to secure it, then I'll take it to the sewing machine and stitch it down. So guys, I am done stitching my plates to my wrapper. So right now I'll go and fold it up like this and top stitch on it. Okay guys, this is the wrapper after top stitching on it. So next is to sew the band to the wrapper. So I place the band like this, then I will use my office pin to hold it. At the edge of the band, I will go in and fold about half an inch like this, then I'll place it on my wrapper like this, then I'll go ahead and sew it all the way to the end of the band. So guys, I am done sewing the band to the wrapper. So right now we'll just go ahead and place the wrapper on our dress. So I just placed my wrapper on the dress like this. That's the front part of my dress. Then I will use my pins to hold them down before I'll take it to my sewing machine and go and stitch that down. For the two side back, I placed the two sides together, right side facing each other. Then I folded up the side front and placed it on my side back. I make sure that I arrange the sides properly, and this allowance you're seeing here is my zipper allowance. So I will use my chalk to mark that out, then I will take it to the sewing machine and stitch it. The stitch that I'll be running for my zipper allowance is a temporary stitch because I will still lose it and place my zip. Okay guys, I am done stitching the zipper allowance. Now let's join the bodice together. So I placed the back and front pieces together, right side facing each other. Then on my bust line, I divided my bust circumference by 2 and mark it on both sides. My bust circumference divided by 2 is 18. That is 36 divided by 2 is 18. Then I mark that on my bust line. Then on my waistline, I divided my waist circumference by 2 again. My waist circumference is 30 divided by 2 is 15. Then I mark that on my waistline. Then I will use my chalk to connect the points together like this. Then on my hip line, I divided my hip circumference by 2 again. My hip is 40 divided by 2 is 20. Then I mark that out on the two sides of my hip line. Then I'll use my chalk to just mark that out. Then from my knee line, I will just mark 2 inches on both sides down to the length of the dress. Before I go and stitch this, I will place the second rope on the right side of my pieces, then I will go on to sew the bodice. Okay guys, I am done sewing my bodice with the rope, so now let's join the shoulder. I place the front shoulder, that is the yoke, in between the back shoulder, then I use the back lining to cover it up like this. Then I will take it to the sewing machine and stitch it. I will do the same thing for the second shoulder as well. So guys, I am done sewing the shoulder. Let me turn it to the right face so you can see what we have here. You can see that the dress is beautiful. So now I will just open the zipper allowance, then I will go on to place my zipper. This is it guys, I am done sewing the zipper, so let's go ahead and work on the sleeve. You know I joined the bodice before, so now I will open up the armhole stitch a little, then I will measure around my armhole, and as you can see I have 21 inches. I did the same thing for the second armhole and I have 21 inches after measuring around the armhole. So now let's use what this measurement and cut the sleeve. So guys, I have 2 pieces of this fabric on fold. That is, I am cutting the 2 sleeves together, and the width is 12.5 inches while the length is 13 inches. So now I will use freehand to create the armhole curve like this. From the cap of the armhole, I will place the measuring tape and measure the length of the sleeve, and the length I am working with is 8 inches. Then I added 2 inches sewing allowance and I marked that. Then I'll use my ruler to connect the line horizontally like this. So right now I'll just go ahead and measure around the armhole of the sleeve to know if it corresponds with that of the dress armhole, and as you can see, it is 21 inches as well. So I'll mark that out. Then on the length of the sleeve, I will divide my round sleeve by 2 and mark it. My round sleeve is 12 inches, divided by 2 is 6 inches. So I mark 6 inches, then I added 1 inch sewing allowance. So I will use my ruler to connect the point like this, and then I will go ahead and cut it out. The sleeve have a V shape at the midpoint, so on my sleeve I went up and marked 5 inches. Then I will use my ruler to connect it down to the length of the sleeve like this. Then I will go ahead and cut it out. Then I will go ahead and cut out my lining pieces for the sleeve. I will reduce the length of the lining by 1 inch. This is because I don't want the lining to show at the length of the sleeve. So I place my lining on the fabric like this, right sides facing each other. Then I'll go on and stitch this part. That is the length of the sleeve. Now that I'm done stitching the length, I will notch the V shape of the sleeve. For the side, I will match the lining and the sleeve like this. Then I will go on and sew it. And I will also do the same thing for this side as well. So guys, I am done sewing the 2 sides. So right now I will just go ahead and turn it to the right face. I will push out all the pointy edges using my scissors. Then I will iron it later, because right now there is no light for me to iron it. So then I'll go ahead and stitch this together. I am done sewing the lining to the fabric. So next on, I will go ahead and attach the sleeve to the dress. But first, let me notch the midpoint of the sleeve. So I folded my sleeve like this and notched the midpoint. So I will place the midpoint of the sleeve on the midpoint of the dress, right side facing each other. Then I will use my office pin to hold them together. I will continue arranging my sleeve on the dress and pinning them down till the end of it. I will take it to the sewing machine and sew it. And I will also do the same thing for the second sleeve as well. Okay guys, I am done joining the sleeve to the dress, and the dress is looking beautiful already. You can see how beautiful and how neat it is. Really like to try this, like to have this in your wardrobe. If yes, do leave a comment for me at the comment section, and if you have a question concerning this tutorial, I will be at the comment section as well. And please do not forget to subscribe, like and share this video. Bye, see you all on my next one.